Hello everybody, welcome back to the Fang Siblings. This is the first video of the year. I've been kind of thinking about whether or not we should just end the channel, but I think both me and Christina are still interested in making videos, and I think yet I'm around 30, so I think I at least want to make enough videos to do 52, which was the original plan, to do a video every week. I've been procrastinating this video for a couple weeks now, which is not the greatest idea. This video is about reading, and kind of had a couple iterations, but I think I figured out what I want to talk about with reading and how I really transformed myself in reading. Last year was the first year I really kept track, and I read around 21 books last year, which is the most amount of books I've probably read in a year before. And yeah, I'm on pace to read even more this year, which is really exciting. So, background change. Okay, so most videos that kind of talk about reading kind of go over through a couple tips and tricks that are kind of either for everyone or just random kind of lifestyle things that work for some people but not everybody. Like, for instance, like carry a book everywhere, or have something on your phone that to remind you not to go just scrolling on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. But you should read. You know, maybe put a book by your bedside or in the bathroom. Make reading a habit in your morning or night routine. Keep track of the books you read. Set page or minute goals, and like start slow. So like say I'm going to read 1 page a day, you know, and then build up from there. I think those are all really great, and I think they really help. But I don't think they make someone necessarily a reader. I think a lot of these are just kind of intro tips that might stick, might not stick, and yeah. So when I thought about kind of reading and how we read, I think the first question that you want to ask yourself is why you read, right? And it can come from a lot of places, both good and bad. And it doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't read if it's a bad reason. You should read, which is a good reason. But it'll affect how you read and what you read, and kind of what will make you keep reading when you either A, don't feel like it, or B, kind of just you forget about it. So I think the first reason, and the most kind of glorified, especially like New Year's resolution reason, is it's good for you, right? And I'm not going to deny reading is good for you. It poses a lot of mental benefits. You know, it's a lot of cognitive benefits. It makes you think about a lot of good stuff. You may learn a lot of things. But there are plenty of things that are good for you that you don't do, and there are plenty of things that are bad for you that you do. It's not really a strong motivator for most people. You know, in reading, there's a lot of inconveniences and things that can block you, loss of motivation. You know, you only have so much willpower. I think there's a lot of honestly better uses for your willpower. So I think just because it's good for you can kind of sometimes not be enough. The second reason is you want to be better, either a better person or better at a thing. You know, you want to be smarter, more effective. You know, it's either for like those kind of like specialists, like you're really into history and you really want to get into one thing, or you're, you know, really into, I don't know, like singing or writing, and you just want to hone in on that stuff. Or you kind of like what I call the Sigma male grinder, who kind of, you know, reads to be better. So like you know, they read like biographies or great works or self-help books, and these are great. They can both empower you and like kind of add tools to your life. Third one is kind of another reason is you miss reading, you know, or you think it's a fun little hobby. This kind of person will read, you know, some old favorites, or they'll start with like fun stuff like sci-fi, drama, mystery, fantasy, whatever. And the fourth reason, which is I think another great reason, is you want to stop looking at your phone and you feel like you want to improve your focus, right? Kind of like exercise, because you don't want to die from diabetes, you know. It's a very strong motivator, but I think like the first one, it has to evolve, right? I point to these reasons in particular. There's probably hundreds of other reasons, but these are the kind of reasons that I've had, you know, throughout kind of my reading journey. And none of them are particularly bad or particularly good in my opinion, but I think that they're not the reasons why I necessarily read now, and there's so much more to reading than just these three things. One of the biggest obstacles, other than like building the habit and kind of not liking it, is kind of your mindset about reading. And that's kind of what I really want to talk about in the majority of this video. I think the number one mindset change about reading that's so essential, that's so important, is reading is not that much about the information that you gain, but it's much more about the space you put your mind in. I'm gonna go for a really kind of easy to grab example like Harry Potter. You know, just knowing the plot of Harry Potter in sequence isn't what draws most people to these books. Knowing Harry Potter is a wizard, he fights another wizard, you know, he does this, he does that, he goes on this adventure. You know, just knowing that is great, but it's not necessarily what makes that book or that experience so important, right? It's really how it makes you feel. It makes you feel young or getting adventures with friends. You know, the image or the characters become manifestations of feelings and relationships. Like, I want a friendship like Harry and Ron's or whatever. You know, these mystical, magical worlds like expand your creativity, and you can feel lifted and taken away from whatever kind of reality confines you. You can experience this new world where things feel like everything feels possible, right? You know, you dress themes of heroism and friendship and adventure. And like these kind of feelings in broader scale emotions don't apply just to fantasy books, right? They apply to all sorts of books in their all own specific ways, you know? One of the reasons I love reading self-help books is not just because the tips in kind of the science about psychology are all super interesting, which, you know, it really is. It really makes you think about yourself in a kind of different light about how you can be better and how you can improve yourself. Make you think about your health, your productivity in like whole new ways. You know, if you're reading a self-help book about how to get better, it's like listening to a song with a melody that's just constantly saying improve yourself over and over. And this idea of them just always talking about how you get better, it just makes you want to get better. It just kind of gets stuck in your head. I think the best part of reading like a lot of those kinds of books are not necessarily the information I gain, but like the thoughts and plans that they inspire in the future. Choosing a book isn't as much about like downloading a menu, just obtaining information. It's much more like choosing a song as you work out. But it's like a theme, emotion, or a story that you carry with you in everyday life, right? You know, so do you want to feel inspired or creative or helpful or global, loved, you know, funny, to be inquisitive, understanding, be a leader? There's so many kind of frames and themes and things that kind of modes you can be in that it's such an enriched way to live, right? Just like if you're reading a book about, you know, someone who lost all their limbs and, you know, made a good life. You'll wake up the next day feeling as grateful as ever. It's like, I have limbs, I can walk, I can run. This is kind of the deeper way that reading just naturally enhances your life. It just kind of, it's like almost like background music for your brain. It's like seeing the Earth from outer space. You know, there's a story of astronauts, and when they go to the outer space and they see the Earth, you know, they don't, it's not, they're like, oh, you know, ooh, the Earth is round, boom, gotcha, flat earthers. They get this kind of overwhelming feeling of how humans are connected and there are no borders, right? And that's what kind of reading is like, you know. It's not just that you don't just go up there to see the Earth like that. It's about the feelings that create. That's what makes the trip worth it, right? That's why you go to the trip. Otherwise, you can just, you know, see a photo, right? That's why people go on mile-long hikes up mountains, you know, to see the view. It's not just about seeing the view. It's about the feeling that view can inspire. The second thing is kind of read timing, right? Don't be afraid to stop. Don't be afraid to read slow, take breaks, and take long-ass breaks. Like, take too long of breaks. Like, take month-long breaks from books. And then just when you start back again, go back a little. So, like, when I first started reading, I was kind of obsessed with reading only, like, worthy books or books that were considered great. And sometimes there were books that were really too complicated for me, and I didn't understand them. And I remember in high school, it took me, like, a couple of months, like 2.5 months to read The Republic, maybe 3 months. And I know I read it, but I do not know a single thing about that book. I have no idea what that book was about, except for like things I learned later. You have to enjoy the process. I think that like the thoughts and kind of little scribbles between reading is like honestly some of the best parts, you know? You find yourself thinking about something while you're reading, or that's something triggered by your book, stop and think about that thing. It might be super cool and worth thinking about, you know? That's where your brain is naturally going. You know, I've done the thing where you're thinking about something, but you're like, no, I'm reading right now. I'll think about this later, and you kind of power through and you keep reading, but it's in the back of your mind. And once you click back in, like, okay, I'm reading now, you might have skipped a few pages. And at that point, you might as well just skip the pages instead of wasting your time kind of moving your eyes over them. Number 3, your attention span might be terrible. If you're someone from my generation and you kind of grow up with your phone, constantly looking at your phone, You might have like ADHD or whatever. Your attention span might be brutal. And I think this part really sucks. But when you experience like the friction, it's kind of like pain when you're working out, you know. Sometimes, you know, you just feel like something's happening. Sometimes you feel like, oh, something good is happening. Sometimes you feel like something serious is happening, good or bad. And sometimes you feel like something definitely bad is happening, right? And for beginners, it can be really hard to kind of gauge that pain, right? Like gauge like what is the friction I'm feeling? Like, is it because this is too hard? Is it because I'm getting bored? Is it because I'm not used to it? You know, a lot of people will kind of advertise the super slow, start from nothing kind of habit building of read, like no pain. And I think that's great, but I just don't think it's really realistic. I think people like to kind of get big starts and kind of maybe go hard too quick in the beginning and then pull back and then build up, you know. So if you feel that tension, it doesn't mean you're doing bad. You might want to pull back, you might want to keep going, but eventually your attention span will improve. And if you go too slow and just go when you're comfortable, your reading attention span might not really grow enough for you to really be satisfied with how much you read. Like number 4, this is a little more tips and tricks-y, but I think it's about consistently having things and choices and decisions around getting books. So number 1, having ways to attain books. I think making a thing of going to the library, having a library card, checking out books. That could be your thing. Having a Kindle and buying the books online, buying books at bookstores or getting them delivered, or subscriptions or Audible services or whatever. Honestly, my personal favorite is the library. I would just kind of go into the public library. I would go walk through the sections, kind of grab random books, and I'd check out like 5 to like 6 books. And then I'd maybe, you know, just kind of keep them handy. You know, I might read one and kind of get half the way through another, and I wouldn't even touch a couple of them. And I just, for me, like, I just didn't want to make that decision between the books, and having multiple books was what I wanted. You know, it was very nice. So consider that, but I think there are a million ways to read, and having a consistent way of this is how I get books is really important. Another way is keeping them handy. I think this is a tip that people use, like you carry them around. But bookshelves are to hold books that you don't read. Don't put your books on bookshelves. Put them on your table, put them on your bed, put them in the bathroom. Right? Other thing is make specific times to read, like, and make them make sense. Like if you say, I want to start reading in the evening, but you get home at 3 a.m. drunk every night, you know, you're not going to read then. Or like, I want to read in the morning, but you wake up at 12 and you're 5 minutes late for class every day. That's not going to work either. So you need to really kind of think about when you're going to read. Like, it's not like, because your phone is simple. Like, you don't need to give yourself time to be on your phone. Sadly, reading is not like that, especially at the beginning, right? Eventually, it could be, but I think for most people, you need to be like, you know what, I'm going to read, and I'm going to read for like 15 minutes on Sunday, right? After I drink, I'll wake up, drink a coffee, read for 15 minutes, and then I'll kind of do my homework, do my tasks, do my errands for the day. If that's all you commit to, that's fine. It really is. But just like having a specific time doesn't mean you can only read in that time, but having a time that is for reading is really helpful. And you don't even need to read in that time, just actively kind of making that choice. You know, there are a lot of things and inconveniences that can stop you from reading. And I think just kind of getting rid of those things is like one of the big steps. Okay, number 5. This is my personal opinion. Read lots of types of books, give lots of books a chance, and don't be afraid to give up on books. In this way, books are kind of like meeting and talking to people, right? You know, I think most of us kind of have a certain type of friend, group of friends that we like and we talk to, we enjoy, we have a good time. But the kind of but that one conversation you have with that person that you didn't really talk to that often, or if like a random stranger when you're, you know, visiting a new town, you know, it's kind of new ways to experience things and people, and you really want to branch out. Another thing is giving up on books. You know, if you're someone like me who like wants to start tracking their books, giving up on books sucks. There is a long list of books I've started and didn't read, probably longer than the books I actually did complete this year. But in the long run, it's definitely worth it. You'll get through way more books if that's your objective. The 6th one, which is kind of one of my favorite rules, is there are no rules. There's no rule that you have to read to the end of the chapter before you stop reading. You can literally just stop right there. This isn't a textbook. You know, if you're someone who likes to doodle, have a pen in your hand, you can draw on your book. I've heard this where maybe you have a book that you're like, oh, you really don't have time. What you can do is tear 5 pages out of the book, fold them up, put it in your pocket, and then, just read them as you're going out through your day. And by the end, you have just finished a book, right? You can read standing up. You can read sitting down. You can read on a Stairmaster or treadmill, which I've done before. I like a lot. You can read on the toilet. You can read out loud to yourself at bed at night. Maybe you want to practice weird accents. Maybe you like audiobooks. It doesn't matter. You can read your way, and you should build your way. You might not have a way of reading, but you can have a process of figuring that out. There's no textbook way of reading that you have to conform to, right? You can read by skipping around. I've seen a lot of people read success like that. Here are some little just small things, right? Don't be afraid to use audiobook or Audible. Find good reading spots. Consider a Kindle. If you have a chance to read a book with someone, it can be really fun, but don't rely on others to read. Carry multiple books, which is something I like to do. Like, I used to have to have a fun book, a challenging book, and a weird book. Maybe for you it's motivated book, relaxed book, pick me up book, like fantasy book, nonfiction book, whatever literary book. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I think having multiple books for multiple moods can be really great. Might always be used, but something to consider. In conclusion, school has done us a terrible disservice by making reading miserable, making reading a chore. Thank God they haven't done that with TV shows, movies, or music, or we'd all be just watching TikToks for fun. We can all find or refine a love for reading. Some of us may not have time, some might not be too traumatized, or some might be too stubborn. But I don't believe that anyone has nothing to gain. And I don't believe that anyone is unable to start reading, barring extreme exceptions like people in comas. But, there are actually a lot of stories of people in comas who can actually hear everything. So maybe just, run an audiobook, people in comas, just in case. And if you don't know what to do, or you don't know what to read, or you're having trouble, I implore you to ask me or someone, to recommend you something or give some advice, because, it's really changed my life, and I think it really can change yours too. Thank you, everybody, and yeah, I'll see you later.